Hello there, you're watching L24 Midnight News, and coming up next in our news program. Tunisia had two polls on Saturday to elect a new House of Representatives that was frozen by the Tunisian President Kais Saied last September. Large crowds in Jalazon camp north of Ramallah buried the body of martyr Khalid Fadi Mohammed and Salama Sharaya on Saturday. And in the European continent, the bloc is witnessing another split of a European Central Bank decision to raise the interest rate. Welcome again. Starting from Algeria, President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received a phone call from his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, on Saturday, in which they addressed bilateral relations and prospects of cooperation between the two countries. According to a statement by the Algerian presidency, the presidents also exchanged views on the situation of Libya and the Sahel and the regional and international issues of mutual interest. Tunisians had two polls on Saturday to elect a new House of Representatives that was frozen by the Tunisian President Kais Saied last September. The country is living various crises, and the new elections are a step to solve a part of the country's political crisis, which has been criticized for long by opposition. Osama Ayadi.
Tunisians headed the polls on Saturday morning as part of the legislative elections, which will allow citizens to choose their representatives in parliament. The elections are part of the Tunisian president's move to set up a new system in the country. In 2021, Saied dismissed the government, froze parliament, and announced that he would rule alongside with a new prime minister.
It's a historic day to elect the members of this council, the Council of People's Representatives, before electing the members of the Council of Districts and Regions.
The announcement of exceptional measures in Tunisia did not go unnoticed in its streets, as the opposition and its supporters did not like what it considered to be a monopolization of power. But the opposite support front was also present, so it supported the step and the ways to go to the new presidential system, in which it sees President Kais Saied as a way to stop the political crises in the country, following disputes that are often repeated between the government and parliament.
God willing, we will create new history in which all Tunisian men and women can live freely, where each of us will find their right to education and health and transportation and social security.
In addition to that, the overlapping of powers between the President of the Republic and the government, which is what the reforms brought by the new constitution that was approved last July through a popular referendum. Then last September, President Kais Saied issued a new electoral law that guides the course of the legislative sessions held.
Those elected today or in the next round must remember that they will be watched by their constituents. So if they fail to keep their promises and work honestly to deliver what they promised their constituents, it's possible that their mandates will be withdrawn, as stipulated by the electoral law.
Tunisian president warned the upcoming parliament of consequences of not fulfilling the electoral pledges, especially that the country lives a severe crisis at various levels. At the same time, the president of the higher authority of elections warned against the false propaganda, as he put the media under scrutiny.
Seen in African continent, Libya's representative to the United Nations, Tahir Sunni, called in a speech before the Security Council to member states to support Libyan initiatives and dialogue aimed at bringing the internal parties together at one table inside the Libyan land. As Sunni warned against manipulations of some countries and the repeated attempts to seize Libyan funds and the frozen assets of the Libyan Investment Authority. This comes at a time when international community calls for finding alternative solution mechanisms and holding those who undermine the cause of elections accountable.
ندعوكم لدعم المبادرات والحوارات الوطنية.
We call on you to support the national dialogues which work on bringing different Libyan parties together on the same table inside Libya, the last of which was the political initiative of the Presidential Council for the dialogues that gathered with the Representatives Council and the Government Council. For this concern, we reiterate our warning against the manipulation of some countries and the repeated attempts to freeze the Libyans' money.
According to the Libyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement on Friday, the Libyan government of national unity rejects the Egyptian presidency decision to outline the country's western maritime borders. Libya's Foreign Affairs considered the delineation unfair under international law. The statement said Egypt's unilateral move was a violation of Libyans' rights and urged the Cairo to hold talks. During his participation in the ministerial conference of the Group of 77 and China, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Nader Al-Arbawi, called for an end to the marginalization of developing countries in the international institutions of economic governance, which cause instability. Al-Arbawi also called for a global economic system based on justice, equality, global interdependence, cooperation between all nations, and reforms of international financial system to promote sustainable development to confront crises. UN humanitarian reported on Friday that severe rains and flooding in West and Central Africa have resulted in 1,400 fatalities and 2.9 million displaced people. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of the Humanitarian Affairs, the worst flooding in years has affected farmlands, livestock, and 8.2 million people's lives in 20 different countries throughout the region. Large crowds in Jalazun camp north of Ramallah to bury the body of martyr Khalid Fadi Muhammad and Salama Sharaya on Saturday. The funeral procession started in front of the Palestinian medical complex in the city of Ramallah with military forces. The two martyrs, Anbar and Sharaya, died when the Zionist occupation army targeted the vehicle with bullets on October the 3rd near Jalazun refugee camp. In a statement, the Public Security Directorate in Jordan announced the arrest of 44 people in several states after their participation in the protests of a fuel prices, which lasted for more than 10 days, killing a police colonel and injuring dozens of civilians and security personnel.
Regions that witness this kind of acts will have a huge presence of security personnel, and force will be used against any unlawful act. I send all my condolences to my colleague, the martyr, Colonel Abdurrazzaq al-Dalabeh, who was killed on duty on Al-Husseiniya region.
To a different matter now, the International Monetary Fund has approved a $3 billion loan for Egypt, which will help the country to cope with its economy with an immediate distribution of about $347 million from the IMF. The extended fund facility will unlock financing from abroad for Egypt, which has been impacted by soaring prices of oil and commodities due to war in Ukraine. Azerbaijan authorities stated that the country is planning to slightly increase its natural gas exports to Europe next year as Brussels seeks to replace falling energy supplies from Russia. The gas exports are expected to reach 12 billion cubic meters. This comes at a time when many European countries have signed the deal which joins the Caucasian country with European together in the Green Energy Deal Agreement. Leaders of Hungary, Romania, Georgia, and Azerbaijan signed an agreement on Saturday for an undersea electricity connector to carry Azeri green energy to Europe. The agreement signed in Bucharest involves installing a cable beneath the Black Sea that would link Azerbaijan to Hungary via Georgia and Romania.
Given the current security context marked by the military aggression against Ukraine, we need to cooperate better and show more solidarity for mitigating common challenges.
To integrate a growing share of renewables, we need indeed stronger electricity interconnections. And this is why the Black Sea electric cable between Romania, Georgia, and Azerbaijan is so important.
Still in Europe, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, on Saturday said that the EU's strategy to turn its back to Russian fossil fuels and diversify towards what she called reliable energy partners was working. The leaders of Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania, and Hungary signed an agreement on Saturday on the construction of an electric cable running under the Black Sea to carry a green Azeri energy from planned Caspian Sea wind farms to Europe.
I'm very glad to be here for this important day, together with leaders from Georgia, from Azerbaijan, from Hungary. This agreement will bring the European Union closer to our partner in the South Caucasus region, and it will both help our regions achieve the clean energy transition. Since the beginning of Russia's war, we have decided to turn our back on Russian fossil fuels and to diversify towards reliable energy partners, like the partners here around the table.
And from Azerbaijan to Germany, that managed to build and link its first floating gas terminal to replace lost supplies of Russian. The 90-kiloton Ho Esperanza, a ship-borne regasification terminal, will in future be able to supply enough gas for 50,000 households for a year. Further, floating liquid natural gas for terminals will flow. Much of the work in securing supplies of the lifeblood of Germany's industrial machine produced at breakneck speed with 26 kilometers of pipeline linking the new terminal to existing grids laid down in just 5 months. Germany hopes to have 30 billion cubic meters of import capacity by the end of the next year.
In fact, we have successfully established such a terminal here in a very short time that we now see the ship here that will perform this task and operationally carry out the regasification of the gas delivered here for the German network, and that is a quite important contribution to our security.
The decision of the European Central Bank to raise the interest rate prompted a split within the European Union. The southern European countries, including Italy, agitated about the decision over fears of rising debt in the coming period amid the war in Ukraine and the energy skyrocketing prices. Islam Seed on what's follow.
The decision to raise the interest rate by the European Central Bank could reflect negatively on the continent. This is how the southern European economies described the move of Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank. Italy sees it helping Russia undermine Western solidarity for Ukraine.
The ECB's policy of raising interest rates is harmful to the European economy and is helping Russia undermine Western solidarity with Ukraine. We are creating an enabling situation for Russia on the economic and social side right now, which confirms the European Central President's mistake.
According to European economic experts, the European Central Bank efforts to adjust its monetary policy course are delayed. Lagarde's decision will result in an increase of debts on the economies of southern European states, and the gap between interest rates in the Eurozone and the United States of America will widen as well.
The European Central Bank's interest rate hike is not positive either for Europe or for Italy's economy. But inflation in Europe is caused by increased energy costs. And the tool to stop inflation in Europe is to set a cap on energy prices.
Higher rates mean higher borrowing costs for Italy, which has the second highest debt mountain in Europe after Greece. The ECB increased its benchmark interest rates by 50 basis points on Thursday. However, the bank shattered hopes that the rate hikes were nearing an end by announcing additional increases in the coming months.
Kremlin announced that Russian President Vladimir Putin had talks with those responsible for the Russian military operation in Ukraine, with the participation of Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov. The announcement comes as Russian forces continue to target Ukrainian regions with missile strikes that cause power outages throughout the country, according to the Ukrainian authorities. In the same line of thought, Russia has stepped up attacks of Ukraine energy facilities in recent weeks. Energy infrastructure was destroyed, leaving Bakhmut city residents facing a harsh winter. Hassan Berkan.
As Ukraine prepares for a harsh winter, wood-burning stoves are delivered to residents of the eastern town of Bakhmut, which has turned into ruins after being heavily shelled by Russian forces. The elderly are among the groups that face great risk in living in areas close to the front lines with low temperature.
We are more or less well, we receive humanitarian aid, but there is no light, no gas, no water, nothing. We hope that one day it will be better.
Despite this, many of them don't want to leave even if they have relatives who might help them evacuate or even move them to safe places.
I only hear the strikes from our side, or maybe I just want to hear them from here, but I only hear them from our side, and that makes me very happy. I will not be able to move. I am 85 years old. I am old and sick. I will not be able to bear it. I know how I will feel.
Temperature across the city have steadily fallen below 0 degrees, with fears that the situation will get worse in the coming months, with the possibility of a very cold weather.
I didn't expect it to be this cold, but for now I'm holding on. I have 3 oil lamps, if you know what that is. You're so young, you probably don't know, but I remember World War II. We used oil lamps then. I still remember.
It is noteworthy that Russia has doubled its targeting of energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine, as power outages have become increasingly common in many regions of the country that are waiting for a very harsh winter.
And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Soufiane Kantouri.
Peru's President Dina Boluarte said on Friday her transitional government was listening to the demands of Peruvians, who have legitimately raised their voices. Boluarte took over for Pedro Castillo after he sought to dissolve Congress ahead of lawmakers' third attempt to impeach him.
I lament the tragic events that have ended the life of several residents in several regions of the country. This has to stop. This transition government that I preside understands and is still listening to the demands of millions of Peruvians that have legitimately raised their voices.
More than 1,000 people joined demonstration in a suburb of Liberia's capital on Saturday, protesting over economic hardships and President George Weah's prolonged absence from the country. Leo Varadkar was elected Irish Prime Minister for the second time on Saturday, taking over from Michel Martin under a novel rotation arrangement struck between the two parties, once war rivals under the 2020 coalition pact. The 24th Arbin Ice Snow World opens on Saturday in northeast China's Heilongjiang province. The Arbin Ice Snow World is one of the world's leading theme parks, featuring large-scale ice and snow sculptures, and it covers 810,000 square meters.
In Algeria, the Algerian scholar Mohamed Saleh As-Siddiqui, symbol Jamila Boukabcha, and the Algerian film director Ahmed Rashidi received the Medal of Memory in Algeria. This came during the 6th edition of the annual ceremony of Medal of Memory organized by the Algerian Organization for Preserving Memory and Communicating the Message of Martyrs, in the presence of Minister of Culture Souria Moulouji and the Minister of Mujahideen Eid Rabika. Ending up our news bulletin with the World Cup classification match and the remarkable performance of Luka Modric, just like in the 2018 World Cup in Russia, where Croatia finished second to France, the champions. This time in Qatar 2022, they have clinched the third place winning a medal bronze against the African team Morocco 2-1, with whom they reached the semi-final for the first time. After the game, now only one battle remains to conclude Qatar's World Cup tournament, when France, the cup defenders, face Argentina today at 4 p.m. local time in a game that could be remembered as the last match for legend Lionel Messi with his national team, hoping to bring the title back home as Maradona did before in 1986 in Mexico. And for what followed, the result of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And for now, good night.